classic fairy tales of old. And those old fairy tales are usually a bit darker than the movies we see. In the case of Sleeping Beauty, that is still quite true. But this princess romance is definitely a lot darker than you remember.
Before the sun sets on her 16th birthday, she shall prick her finger on the spindle of a spinning wheel and die.
Maleficent's curse on Aurora at the beginning of the film is really the least of its darkness. The moment Aurora falls asleep is pretty terrifying within itself, and Prince Philip's fight with Maleficent at the end is scary as well.
And all the powers of hell!
As a dragon, Maleficent becomes one of the more intimidating villains in Disney history. Exactly where this one's going. The majority of Fantasia, a sort of series of musical sequences, isn't too scary, but the ending scene will have you quaking in your boots.
Here on Walpurgis Night, which is the equivalent of our own Halloween, the creatures of evil gathered to worship their master. Under his spell, they dance furiously.
The last section of the film is called Night on Bald Mountain. If the name doesn't already give you pause, you're in for a treat. It centers around a devil named Chernabog, a terrifyingly large winged creature who summons a number of lesser demons to do his bidding for the night. From its music to its animation, is one of the scariest things we've ever seen. Feature film, it seems that the House of Mouse was still ironing out the kinks of what kids would like when they made this one. It has, of course, become a timeless classic, but its themes are decidedly more sinister than some of its successors. The evil queen wanting to dispose of Snow White is pretty standard fairy tale fodder, but it's the part where she wants the hunter to rip her heart out and put it on display that has us raising our eyebrows.
Bring back her heart in this.
Welcome back, my dear followers, friends, viewers, or welcome if it's the first time you're watching my YouTube channel. There are rumors especially in the last few years, that Walt Disney wasn't so good as many people thought, but he had a great dark side. And also Disney cartoons, even the most loved Disney cartoons ever, actually have satanic messages and also a kind of satanic worship. Is it true? We'll discover it in a few minutes, because in few minutes we will return to my personal computer to watch carefully at the creepiest, horror, dark, gothic, scariest scenes of the most loved Disney cartoons ever, and we will discover if it is true. Walt Disney, Walter Elias Disney, called Walt, was born on the 5th of December 1901, and he was an animator, director, film producer, entrepreneur, dubber, co-founder, president, CEO of the Walt Disney Company. And think about that, he won 34 Oscar! 34 Oscar! Oh my gosh! In all his career, he had 50 59 nominees and he won 34 Oscars. And it's a record never broken. Is still the one and only in the history of cinema ever. That's really incredible. He got married on July the 13th, 1925. And you must know that he invented our loved Mickey Mouse. But in the beginning, Walt Disney chose the name Mortimer Mouse. Mortimer Mouse had to be the real name of Mickey Mouse. Oh my gosh! But thanks to his wife, he chose the name Mickey Mouse. And think about that until 1947, Walt Disney himself gave his voice to Mickey Mouse. Even if successful, he fell into a deep depression. And because of doctor's order in 1931, he left for a holiday with his wife, and at his return, he dedicated part of his time to sport, and finally he felt better and he healed. And in 1933, his first daughter, Diane Mary, was born, and about in 1936 he adopted his second daughter, Sharon May, who was born in 1936. Many people who are spreading around the world really huge lies, because Walt Disney was anti-Nazi. Absolutely, he was good. So, during the Second Worldwide War, he was an anti-Nazist, and he produced a short film with cartoons in 1943 called Der Führer's Face. The protagonist was Donald Duck, and Walt Disney won the Oscar. In 1943 with the short film Der Führer's Face, the best animated short film of the year 1943. In the summer 1966, he discovered to have a left lung cancer, and he died because of a cardiovascular collapse on December the 15th, 1966, and he was only 65. He died in hospital and he suffered very much. He died in the hospital in Burbank, California, and And on December the 17th, he was cremated, and his ashes located at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California. But now there is a disquieting, creepy legend still rumored nowadays, and it'll be really creepy. The legend says that Walt Disney was frozen, and he would have been put into hibernation to be resuscitated in the future, in the more advanced times. Oh my gosh! What is happening? What is happening right now? Touch the spindle! Touch the spindle! I said! Oh my God! What happened to me? What happened to me? Oh. What happened to my hair? And also my nails are black. I know that it's not Halloween anymore, but I like playing pranks. And now let's return to the Satanic Disney horror cartoons. Did you notice that in almost all the Disney cartoons, Disney fairy tales, the main characters are motherless or they are completely orphans? Did you notice them? For example, White Snow, Cinderella, and the heartbreaking cartoons like Dumbo, Bambi, and even my favorite Disney cartoon and fairy tale ever, because I consider it a masterpiece, and it's still my favorite fairy tale ever. I'm talking about Sleeping Beauty. Sleeping Beauty is my favorite fairy tale ever, and my favorite Disney princess is Aurora. And I love this little statue because there is Maleficent turned into a dragon who, with her evilish wings, she is robbing the Gothic castle of Aurora. Sleeping Beauty is a masterpiece and my favorite Disney fairy tale ever. And it's also very similar to me because it's just dark, gothic, romantic. But now, for example, Aurora, even if she's an exception because at least she has her mother alive even when she will be 16, but she's not raised by her mother because of Maleficent's curse. So she was raised by the three lovely fairies in that cabin in the wood. So, but almost all the other characters, Cinderella and many others, are motherless. Do you know why? This is because a huge tragedy happened to Walt Disney himself. This is what you must know to understand who Walt Disney really was. You must know that the lovely mother of Walt Disney was called Flora Cole. And Walt Disney, when he became rich, in 1938, he decided to buy a house for his parents, and he also made them as gift a furnace to warm them from cold. But this furnace, because there are two hypotheses. One hypothesis, this furnace had a malfunction. Instead, the second hypothesis, and probably is the right one, is because technicians who settled the furnace didn't settle it well. So there was a fatal gas leak, and Walt Disney mother died intoxicated. Think about that. In the morning, the maids arrived to their home, and she succeeded in pulling out of the house both the mother and the father of Walt Disney. But meanwhile, the father, she pulled them out on the grass, in the air, and while Walt Disney's father was intoxicated, he was transported to hospital and he survived. Walt Disney's lovely mother died intoxicated, and Walt Disney felt so responsible for this huge tragedy that hit his family, that he brought on his shoulder the burden of the guilt. Even if he wasn't guilty, he wanted to give an expensive gift to his parents because they weren't rich. and he had become millionaire. So it's a real tragedy. So I want to tell you that Walt Disney wasn't Nazi. He was anti-Nazi. And he was absolutely a genius. And he died pretty young. He was only 65. But we were remained. What about Disney cartoons? Is it true that there is Satanism in Disney cartoons and that even in the most loved Disney cartoons there are satanic messages? Let's discover it together! So let's start with Sleeping Beauty.
A variety of changes in Walt Disney's original 1959 retelling of Sleeping Beauty, but one of their most notable changes was expanding the character of the original old woman who cursed the princess. Disney reinvented this character into who we know now as one of the greatest villains of all time, Maleficent. Through her elegant design, dramatic and flamboyant animation, and unlimited arsenal of magical powers, Maleficent is truly the mistress of all evil. Hello, I'm Isaac from What's Up Videos, where we discuss fun topics for fun people. Today, I'm crew. She became aware of her lust of power and knew she possessed the magic to obtain anything she desired. Maleficent cast herself within a ruined castle located on the Forbidden Mountain, where she plotted the demise of her enemies, harnessed her powers, and ruled over her goblin subjects. She lived with her blundering race of simple-minded goons and her only friend, Diablo. Her ideology heavily conflicted with the rule-based, altruistic good fairies, which is likely why they seem to have a negative history and know of her evil. For many years, no one dared to oppose the Dark Fairy, as she proudly stood as one of the greatest magical wielders in the land. But she was eventually undermined by King Stefan, for he shamed her by not sending an invitation to his daughter's christening. To take revenge on the kingdom, she curses the child, decreeing that before the sun sets on her 16th birthday, she will prick her finger and die. Why did she choose this curse? Of course Maleficent had the power to kill Aurora, but she didn't want the kingdom to just have to grieve. She wanted the citizens to scramble, worry, and be tortured by her magic for close to 2 decades. Maleficent proves she is present to cause sorrow, despair, and chaos to the kingdom. Unfortunately, Aurora wouldn't die if she pricked her finger, for Merryweather altered the curse so she would only be plunged into a deep sleep. Soon after the christening, the princess disappears, but days before the 16th year, Maleficent's companion Diablo locates the girl, allowing Maleficent to lure Aurora to prick her finger.
Now let's watch one of the scariest. She defines herself.
Aurora to prick her finger.
She defines herself mistress of evil.
The girl, allowing Maleficent to lure Aurora to prick her finger.
You poor simple fools, thinking you could defeat me.
To keep Aurora in the trance, Maleficent imprisons Prince Philip, Aurora's true love, to make sure he could not awaken his princess with true love's kiss. In the dungeon of her castle, Maleficent reveals her torturous and taunting behavior again, as she tells Philip she will release him from his chains in 100 years, when he will be old and battered, while Aurora will remain gorgeous and without age. The good fairies are unwilling to allow the girl they loved and raised be taken away from their family, so they rush to the Forbidden Mountain and unchain the young prince. Maleficent is awakened from her sleep by Diablo's cawing as Prince Philip voyages to Aurora, which enrages Maleficent. But she truly is infuriated when she finds Diablo has been transformed into a statue. She casts a wall of thorns and transforms into a dragon to stop the prince using all the powers of hell, but the magic of all of the good fairies is too much for Maleficent. The Sword of Truth plummets into her chest, and she falls into a chasm, attempting to end Philip's life with her dying breath. In the story Maleficent's Revenge, 2 years after the events of Sleeping Beauty,
So, have you heard? Maleficent defines herself the mistress of evil, and in the final battle against the prince, she calls all the forces of hell. Of course, there is Satan, or she adores Satan, or she's Satan herself. And now look at this.
Film begins by really setting the nightmare-fueled tone. The evil queen of the land summons her magic mirror on the wall. Yeah, that's right, not mirror on the wall, which is a proper mandala effect, but the magic mirror is summoned, and goodness gracious me, the hazy mask that appears in the mirror with its blank eyes and alien-like expression are enough to give you chills. It's kinda like a theatre mask. You know, the happy and the sad one. Those have always gave me the creeps. But here, amidst the literal smoke and mirrors on display, this is one face that would give a sleep paralysis demon nightmares. The queen wants the fairest one in the land killed, this being Snow White, her stepdaughter. Because the queen is no longer considered the fairest by the mirror, she wants to regain her #1 slot, and the only way to do that is to kill off Snow White. The queen employs a huntsman to kill her, cut out her heart, put it in a box, and return it to her. That's insane to consider for a young child. This pure, innocent, beautiful young girl is to have her heart cut out and stored away, all for the sake of the queen's vanity. Though this doesn't happen, the mental...
Now, a scene that looks like a real horror demonic movie.
The bulk of the landscape is in darkness, and when combined with the very little light she can make out and the sounds of the forest around her, her mind begins to play tricks on her. Her hallucinations produce some truly nightmarish visions. Animals jump out at her and startle her. The tree branches that latch onto her clothes become talons and claws. Even the tree trunks themselves have large beaming eyes and evil expressions as they reach out to grab her. Even floating tree trunks become crocodiles and pursue her. Everything builds up, and the fright factor increases exponentially, building up and up and up until Snow White collapses in the queen that Snow White is still alive, and that the heart in the box returned by the huntsman belongs to a pig, which in itself is mega off-putting. She decides to take matters into her own hands. How does she do this, you ask? She brews her very own nightmare fuel, of course. By combining various ingredients, the queen concocts a potion that transforms her into an old hag. Her transformation is simply ghastly, her hair suddenly whitening, her hands and fingernails elongating, and her voice becoming an ancient cackle while her shadow on the wall reshapes itself. It's absolutely fucked. The old hag is one of Disney's most fearsome villains. Her eyes bulge and her skeletal body choppily wanders around, creaking and cracking as it moves. It gives the hag a much more demonic presence whenever on screen. Then, when setting up a poison apple to put Snow White into a deep sleep, we get even more horrific imagery as the apple becomes green and drips with poison, representing a skull. Look at the state of that, man. But the tip of the nightmare iceberg comes from one particular moment, a legitimate jump scare that has troubled people of all ages for generations. While Snow White is minding her own business in the home of the dwarves, this happens.
And now, look at this. I've never seen a more horrifying witch.
Just drink this in. This is as bad as it gets. The fact the hag is leaning into the home through a small open window, yet again her face is shaded other than her eyes glowing. Her crooked facial features and piercing gaze looking right at Snow White and the audience, and her twisted up-to-no-good grin means that this individual frame has been responsible for thousands of bad dreams. It all...
And now there is the devil, even in a apparently joyful movie. I'm talking about The Little Mermaid.
To get to the sea witch after Triton destroyed all of what she loved that made her so alive. This is where we finally get to see, by the tone of the story before seeing Ursula herself, of how it gets a little darker, knowing of the true nature of what we're supposed to suspect. You see these lost souls down here of the polyps that we know later to be merfolk that made deals with the devil herself, that are now kept clinging on to any hope for others to help, that makes Ariel repulse in fear of what they are now. Souls that need help but cannot get it when it ends up looking like the other way when you appear as a soulless monster, which is what this character actually is, appearing as a charming, boastful aunt that promises says to help make your dreams come true, but
And now there is what is considered a clear, evident oath with the devil, because Ariel must sign a contract, and even if she knows the risks about it, she accepts the conditions. So even Ariel, in this moment of the film, has a dark side.
that shows us the true nature of the villain hidden in plain sight despite having characters like Ariel in clear view. Arrogant confidence that she can manipulate the daughter of the king even. The entire song clearly alludes to her backstabbing nature of the deals, knowing the long list of people who we literally see physically in the polyp form like creatures that she already helped, but then they all failed to seal the deal that they made, but still posturing herself as a saint that overall helped them to get what they want, that she turned her miserable life into happy successes for a time as long as they would succeed, until we find out that the conditions she lays Ariel that she has to do on land when she becomes human, losing her voice and needing to kiss Eric if she wanted to remain that way, where if she failed, the contract she would sign would be signing her life away to be owned by Ursula, and no one else could stop it. Like, another point to her character is that she does commit to giving people what they want, which is more than you could say for any other villain, but like the rest, still puts in the conditions and has her own agenda to complete with them. Because why would she just willingly give these things away to the people if she didn't also have something to gain from doing so? Yes, you can achieve your dreams, but you know, what else can I do with that? Using their desires to fuel her own desires. Just like how many humans have done over history, benefiting off the suffering of others, both in terms of the helpful disguise and the real predatory nature behind it all. But she still casually manipulates herself into believing mindless drone to serve her own will, to own Ariel as a result, which is access for something else, to break her spirit even more for a fact that she would never be able to achieve her dreams. Similar in the case of the events of the tale, but without the fact that he did this out of his own accord, and it was a different woman rather than the sea witch herself, who just knew her situation was unavoidable no matter what she did, but then finding the courage in this version to rewrite the wrongs from an evil intent. I mean,
Even though ocean looks like blood or wine.
From above, and then rain hell to try to stop them, yet how it still runs out the clock for Ursula when she finally gets her voice back. We remember if she couldn't kiss him back in time like Sundown, she would revert back to a mermaid form and belong solely to Ursula, which Eric tries to chase after her, with King Triton discovering this but powerless to stop a contract signed by her. The true master plan of using this unavoidable signature to make a deal with King Triton to get what she really wanted this entire time, the power over the 7 seas, the rule over the oceans as its supreme leader or being, turning him into the same polyps hidden beneath the cave with nobody left to stop her except for a passionate Ariel, who Eric also joins in to stop, indirectly killing Flotsam and Jetsam as a result that makes her mad and surfaces a beast that towers above the oceans. Like, everything you knew about her is elevated to a great physical degree of someone who cannot be stopped, holding more power than you can ever imagine. Of course, with someone like Eric, who values his love as Ariel no matter who she is, Ursula gets caught up in her own overconfident pursuit of the one she hates the most, concentrating all efforts on her rather than her surroundings, finally becoming impaled, focusing on the fact of the disgusting true love that shouldn't work for villains who normally hate, but then turns it the other way around, slowly sinking back into the abyss, into utter nothingness, restoring everyone in the process back to their original forms, freeing everyone from the dreadful bonds that they made with the Sea Witch herself to achieve their own dreams. And of course, having Triton learn the most of all to care for his daughter and then set her free. Now,
Ursula was Claire, a demonic creature. Even Sebastian warned Ariel. She's the devil, he says at some point in the movie. And now watch at this.
Upon a time, in a faraway land,
film previously with how we came to know the Beast, an arrogant young prince who lived high above the castle and rejected those beneath him as ugly. How his heart was just cold and hardened to a degree that already made him a monster, so the enchantress decided to curse him to what he truly was at the time, and all of those who lived within his walls, even though they didn't deserve it at all. That the mission was, until he learned to love another, to really have a heart, he would stay like this forever and ever, eternally wasting alone as a feral animal whom no living creature would want to be in contact with. The importance of mentioning Beast at this moment in time for Gaston is to show someone of a similar vein, someone who can't love another but his own self with his own inflated ego. And like the Beast being the prince and lord of his castle, Gaston is held in high regard within the entire town. Demonstrates somebody who lives on the far end of the spectrum well above others except themselves to even be considered human at that point. Where he's just an arrogant, selfish monster, where having others think for their own good is just a dangerous thought to him that stops them from gaining complete control over a group of people. His idiotic nature is made up for with his intimidating, cunning attitude and persistent nature that never quits. Sure, you might say that everyone else might easily fit his image perfectly for what he wants to dream in his own life with Belle, but how he doesn't want that because he is a hunter. He's after...
Until this point, Gaston is a braggart, chauvinist, a bad guy, but just a braggart. Instead, at some point of the story, he embraces a great dark side.
Solutions to his advantage to try to get Belle out and back to save him. Get a plan to help marry her by forcing to turn her father back into an asylum with his crazy ideas after the work she did to trade places so that he may live. To put him back in prison after her own hard work so that she can be forced in a position to marry him. He may lack intelligence in most of the basic ways like reading books or knowing longer words, but he still is smart enough to manipulate situations to his advantage if it is deemed fit. Like even after that plan fails, because Belle knows the truth, he still manages to grab on another actual idea like the Beast himself through the mirror, knowing that this is where Belle's heart truly lies and what must be done. That if she can love a beast, and if Belle could not love him, then nobody else can. He resorts to his brutal violence that he's known for, being a hunter, rallying everyone to the opinion that we must kill the beast and save the town because he deserves such a beauty as her. And through this mob mentality that still allows his dangerously evil grip on the townsfolk, confirms what Belle has figured out the most, rightfully assuming that he had become the real monster. That through his pathetic nature of a selfish, greedy brat, he becomes a true villain bent on nothing but destruction. Because you could see nothing here but people bent to his own will to attack a bunch of innocent people turned into pots and pans and other appliances before they try to give him the fright of their lives, while Gaston tries to aim for his biggest prize yet in life, being the Beast, to finally match two men who have gone too far in their lives and lost too much in that own meaning.
In this masterpiece film, one of the greatest ones of Disney, at this point, Gaston is the Beast.
Who feared him and hated him for what he had become, and can only hope to bury that part forever since he rejected that side with nothing left to be done. Nothing left to lose since he has everything he wants. But then when Belle re-enters the picture, it reignites that passion Beast has to fight for something that could save his life, while reversing the picture and cowering fear of Gaston, who cannot defeat such an enemy that was motivated by real true love. And of course, even though you saw him lock up Maurice and Belle earlier, he still clearly loves Belle often in his own manufactured selfish type of love, claiming her as his only, just to goad him out, but also failing when Beast grabs him above the castle where he could surely fall, showcasing his true patheticness as a person who begs for mercy compared to the image he had cultivated throughout the film. That this showed who he truly was on the inside, as a coward to the extreme who only sought after others to fulfill his own life's purpose before he finally begs to agree to the Beast's demands so he can live, using the backstabbing technique as the only way to get any sort of advantage, which also happens to be his greatest downfall in the literal and metaphorical senses of the word. And one of the things you appreciate about this is the fact that his eyes get painted with skulls as he falls down, affirming that he did indeed not.
This is a particular that few people noticed. While Gaston is dying and he stabbed the beast at his back, and the beast had a heart to save even this monster, because the beast has become able to love. Gaston has become pure evil. Look at Gaston's eyes, because few people noticed this dark particular. In the eyes of Gaston falling to death, there is death. There are skulls in his eyes. A very dark, gothic, macabre particular.
Survive and died as a monster who tried to consume everything in his path but ended up being himself at the very end, while Beast instead finally gets saved for sacrificing himself in the name of selfless, compassionate love that humans need in their lives. The reveal of this changed heart that allowed him to become human again rather than wasting his days suffering as a beast. Of course,
And now, another unexpected fairy tale from Disney. I'm talking about Cinderella. Cinderella. This film had many dark scenes, maybe you never noticed. This is Lady Tremaine, the evilish stepmother of Cinderella, and think about that, her cat. The name of her cat is Lucifer. How can you call a cat Lucifer if you are not evilish too?
The darkness of her bedroom, stroking her cat like a James Bond villain. Cinderella stands powerless before her, the shadows on the wall looking like prison bars. Even as a child, I remember this scene making me feel very nervous and on edge.
The darkest part that gives some chills about Lady Tremaine.
She is mostly rather soft-spoken and very subtle in how she moves and speaks. Unlike her clownish daughters, Lady Tremaine's mind is constantly moving, constantly calculating, and planning every action. Everything she does is completely deliberate, and the way that we see it reflected through her animation is brilliant. Some of the glares she gives with her piercing green eyes are enough to still give me shivers. Of course, her most frightening moment is where she follows Cinderella up the stairs, prepared to lock her in the tower. She's entirely silent, but absolutely furious. And of course, she cruelly trips the footman at the end, breaking the glass slipper.
And in Cinderella, there is a particular, very gothic, because when the good fairy transforms everything to make Cinderella go to the castle of the prince, she uses a pumpkin like the ones you see on Halloween to create a carriage. Look at this gothic particular in Cinderella. Look, if it was a horror movie, I remember the movie The House, with the Ferox roots. Instead, it becomes... Many people say that here we are in Rapunzel, that Mother Gothel, who kidnapped Rapunzel when she was a kid, because she discovers the magical powers of a flower, and to remain young and pretty fascinating for forever, thanks to the magic hair of Rapunzel. Many reviewers say that this kind of witch isn't the black magic. She's not a proper witch. But there is an attraction to evil, because there is magic in the amazing hair of Rapunzel, who is completely insane. Look with your eyes.
Smart, like really smart, a competent villain. She discovers the power of the flower first out of anyone. She protects and cultivates it for hundreds of years without losing access. And when she does lose access, she instantly busts into what you'd assume is the most highly protected place in the world, or at least in the kingdom, and abducts the royal baby. And all of this as an old woman. She then manages to outrun the guards and keep her hidden for 16 years, convincing her it's for the best and to keep her safe. And considering it's likely that for many of these years the kingdom was out in force looking for her, because they know the baby was abducted, then I think it's doubly impressive that she was able to successfully hide her all this time, whilst also regularly leaving to go and do whatever it is she does. And then when Rapunzel does finally go out into the world, Gothel pretty easily tracks her down. She quickly makes an alliance with the twins, who take out Eugene for her, thus allowing her to set up events to get her back into Rapunzel's head by making her think that Eugene betrayed her and abandoned her, whilst also knocking out the twins and double-crossing them at the same time, tying off any possible loose ends and condemning them and Eugene to death, preventing all three of them from ever blabbing about what they saw and potentially getting her in trouble from the king and queen. And this pretty much guarantees that she and Rapunzel are going to remain hidden forever. But then Eugene does come back, and what do you know? She ambushes him and kills him straight up. And she only dies because she couldn't predict that the dude would rather let himself die than let a girl that he's known for like 2 days suffer. And so in my eyes, because...
And now, the scene that most of you were waiting for. As I said before, Sleeping Beauty is a masterpiece. And it's not only my favorite fairy tale ever, but also the first one for many people of the world. And I'm going to show you what it is considered the scariest scene of the movie, that is so dark, gothic, and also fascinating in this gothic. I go on. So we discover if Maleficent is really the mistress of evil, and there is a clear satanic message. I start.
touch it, I say. You poor simple fools, thinking you could defeat me, the mistress of all evil. Well, here's your precious princess.
So, let's return to the enigma with whom I opened this documentary. Is there a dark side in Disney cartoons? Yes, there is. And do Disney cartoons worship Satan? Yes, they do. But which is the moral of all the movies I made you watch and of other Disney fairy tales? Not all the Disney cartoons worship the devil, but only the evilish characters. Meanwhile, all the evilish characters in Disney cartoons are defeated. The good ones. No, because the moral of Disney cartoons is that the good always wins.